Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Two Sides of the Same Coin. We are back, and we're excited to bring you a very heart-touching, heart-wrenching show today about a subject that is so important to our communities across this country, particularly the communities of the African Americans, and what we're dealing with. Roy, what are we doing today?
This is Roy. Peace. Yeah, we're excited. We're talking about an issue that involved a young man who lost his life on a no-knock warrant. Uh, Something that's been happening far too often in the Black and Brown community in particular. And so we want to address that issue, and we've got his wonderful mother who's joining us today. Uh, and I'll let Luana introduce her. Let's hear from Luana. What do you want to tell us?
Yes. So yeah, I do know Amir Locke's mother. We met years ago, and we've been very much in tune with each other ever since. Her name is Karen Wells. I reached out to her a few weeks ago and had a conversation with her, and I asked her to come onto our podcast, and she said she'd be willing to come onto the
How long have
podcast.
you known Karen, Luana, the family?
Um, has it been about? It's been 6 years, 7 years, something like that,
Yes,
or longer.
yes,
I know. I know her son was very. I know he was young. So I've known Karen for about 6 or 7 years, but I've known Karen ex-husband, Amir Locke's father. I worked with him, and I've known him for a good what 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
yes. So I have I know him, and I went to Amir Locke's funeral. So
Yeah.
At this
yeah,
Well,
time,
we want to commend you, Luana, for putting this show together today. This was your hard effort and working and talking with Karen. She's extremely busy. She's traveling. She's in and out of different states, and she's soldiering on, looking for, continuing to look for justice for Amir Locke. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our guest today.
Karen Wells, welcome to
Karen,
Two
thank you.
Sides of the Same Coin.
Welcome, Karen.
Welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for coming to us. Again, we're honored to have you here on the show. And it's sad and unfortunate that it's under these circumstances, but this is something that we know it's dear to your heart in terms of being a voice for something that needs to happen when it comes to the no knock tragedy that continues to come within our communities and take our young men's lives.
And just on the
So
note of just losing a son as a mother, we understand you're a mother of two and two boys. Roy and I are fathers of daughters, but and that's something that we feel, even with what they go through on a day-to-day basis, we worry about it. But with sons, we understand it. And growing up as African American men throughout this country, particularly in the state of Minnesota as well, our hearts go out to you for your loss, and we feel for you. We want to bring what you're going through, what you're fighting for to light today through our show, Two Sides of the Same Coin. So again, on behalf of Roy, myself, and Luana, and the rest of the crew, we welcome
We
you to the
welcome
show.
you. We welcome you, Karen.
thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to each and every last one of you for bringing me on your show and wanting to allow me to share my story about my son as we continue on to fight for justice for Amir Locke. So I really appreciate all of you.
We appreciate you.
Appreciate
We
you.
really do. So, Karen, I want to dive right into it. Can you take us back to the day you got that phone call? What was you doing when you got the phone call about Amir?
On February 2nd, 2022, I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was actually at work. So I believe I got the phone call roughly around maybe it was like after 10:30 a.m. I got the phone call from Andre Locke Sr., also known as Buddy, their dad, and he actually called me and he basically um, he was like, where are you?" And I was like, "I'm at work." And all of a sudden, he just started crying, and he was just like, "I just got a call." And he said, "I was told that Amir was killed by the Minneapolis Police Department." I let out a loud scream, and I was like, "I know you're not lying." Basically, I was like, "I know you're not telling me the truth." He's like, "I'm gonna go down there and see what's going on and find out." And I was just like screaming. And I just like, I was at work, and at that time I was doing property management in Dallas, Texas. So I was at work, and I have staff. I have a leasing agent. I had an assistant, and they heard me screaming, and so they came running uh, to me, and I I lost it. I got on the phone. I called my sister. I think if I can remember, I don't know if I called her or she called me, and I was just screaming and yelling, and I was telling her, I was like, what had happened, and I was like, I hope that it's not true. I hope that it's not true. But I found out, later on that my sister had knew, um, and she just couldn't bear to tell me that it was true, and so I was at work, and
Is it your sister that lives here or the one that lives in Chicago?
my sister Linda, we all lived in Minneapolis, in Minnesota before, but
Right,
she
right,
currently lives in Illinois.
right. Okay.
Did you know, or when did you learn of the circumstances, Karen, of his passing?
So, so basically, so at that time, um, I couldn't even drive home by myself. My coworkers were crying; they were hysterical. We'll drive you, and I said I can drive. They followed me. They closed up the office. They told like residents that were in the lobby area to just go home and leave because we had an emergency. And one thing I want to say, I want to go back to that day, and it was very disrespectful. But the company that I worked for, at that time, the regional manager, when I called her and told her what happened to my son, she told me, well, can you please make sure that you finish what you need to do? And I was like, what did you say to me? I said, what did you just say? And I hung up on her. And my coworkers were like, don't worry about anything. We got you covered. And they followed me home. And when I got there, I can't even remember. My older son was staying with me also in Dallas at the time. And I went upstairs and I walked in, and I just walked in his room, and I just told him. I told him what I heard, and I said, we're going to find out what's going on. And then I went back to call my sister, and she had to explain to me how to pack because I had to leave. I had to get on a flight that same day that he was murdered by the police department. I had to get on a flight. I didn't even know how to pack my bag. I didn't even know what to take. It was wintertime. It's not snow in Texas, but it's snow in Minnesota. I lived there for years, but I literally had to have my sister walk me on the phone through my closet as I packed to come to Minnesota.
When did you find out, as far as the circumstances as it pertained to a no-knock warrant? Did the officers sit you down and explain to you what happened and why this happened like this?
No, actually, Buddy is the one that was on the phone with me and keeping me in contact. And he was like, they're saying that this is what they were saying. This is what he told me. He said they're saying that he was waiting for them to enter the apartment, sitting on the couch, waiting for them to come in. And that's when he was like, and it was for a no-knock warrant. And then rumors are going around. They were already saying my son was a homicide suspect, saying that he was Somalian. They were just
Oh my.
it was a lot that I wasn't like. Once I got to the airport, I was on the phone continuously with my sister, and she was just like updating me and telling me what was going, like what she was hearing and what was going on. And so Buddy as well was telling me, but like I said, I was just trying to get to, my child. I was trying to get to Minnesota.
So when the officers did come to you and explain to you, that they just say, well, because obviously you hear the rumors and everything, but uh, which officer, if there's anyone in particular who came to you, sat you down and said, this is what happened?
Or was it an officer,
Or
or
was
was
it
it
an
somebody
officer?
else?
No, it was actually the BCA. So
Okay, Bureau of
That's the
Criminal
Bureau of Criminal
yeah, the
Apprehension.
BCA.
Okay.
The BCA contact actually when Buddy made it back home to his
Wait
house.
1 second, Karen. Who's Buddy?
But he's Andre Locke. He's known
Okay.
as
Oh,
Andre.
Andre.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, go
So
ahead.
I'll say Andre. If I say
Well,
Buddy,
you can,
I'm
Buddy's
talking about
fine. We know
You
who
can
he
say
is now.
buddy. You can say
We
buddy.
know who he is now. Oh, go ahead,
Yes.
Karen.
So he was actually he got home, and then he said that the BCA was already at his house, but he was trying to get to. He was already going down to the scene where it happened, and so when he got back home, the BCA was there at his house, and then he put me on speakerphone, and they were just saying there was the police shooting. They don't give you like all the details and information, and then some lady was saying if I needed to talk to her, I could contact her. She got on the phone and spoke with me, gave me her condolences, and that was really it. And so after that, while I was at the airport, and that's when my sister was like, Karen, she was like, she basically was like, you need an attorney. And I was like, I'm not even thinking like where I'm like, this is something new. She's like, you need an attorney. But right while I was in the airport, the attorneys, people were trying to reach out to try to find out who was the young man and who were his parents, because at that time they didn't even release his name, because they didn't even know who my son was, because they don't have him in the database in their system.
Tell us a little bit about Amir, about what his background is. Uh, just kind of tell us a little bit about who he is, who your son was, and how he lived his life. So, because he wasn't in a database anywhere, and there's a reason for that. So please share that with us right now.
So Amir was between me and his dad. Amir is the third oldest son on his dad's side. But with me, he would be my baby because I only had two. I have his older brother now who is 26, and then Amir, 22. So I only had two boys. And Amir was just, Amir was a type where he looked up to his brother growing up, because that's who he saw as a figure. Like, he looked up to him. He mimicked everything he did. He wanted to dance like him. He just did everything, just like his older brother. Then eventually, as Amir got older, when they were in elementary school, they joined a dance group, African drum dance group. That's where you could see where he was coming out of who he was. And he actually started school at the age of 4. He started like dancing and really coming out of his little shell. And then he just, as he got older, they would dance, and then my oldest was really into, rap, hip hop because of their father. And we didn't even know that Amir was interested, because he was just like, wasn't really showing any signs of wanting to follow in his dad's footsteps as far as when it came to the music. And Amir, all of a sudden, he just started, freestyling, like he could freestyle. It just went from there. He was just a sweet person. He was funny. He liked to joke. Um, Amir wanted to. Amir was becoming who he wanted to be. Amir was that type of person where if you, one thing, Amir was very independent. I remember one time when he bought a phone, and, it was more or less like his dad was like, well, he had the phone for him. And so it was more or less like a teenager where it's like, you know how we control our children. Amir decided, no, I'm going to go and buy my own phone. Here's your phone back. So now that's Amir. That was Amir. And then Amir was like, now, if I don't want to answer my phone for anybody, I don't have to, because I'm paying for my phone. So that's the kind of person, and I had to respect him.
Right.
I had to respect him because, and that's who he was. He was very independent. He was door dashing at the time. We relocated to Dallas in 2019, and we were there. And then he was actually back here, well, up there, because I'm in Nebraska. So he was up in the Twin Cities visiting.
Okay.
And he was coming back, but at the time when he was visiting.
So when
Karen,
you say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Laura. I was gonna.
Karen, let me ask you this. Um, Amir, you always said that he wanted to be an entrepreneur. He never wanted to work for anyone. He also had like a foundation that he had started.
So actually, Amir came to me and he was talking about clothing, a clothing line, and he said that he wanted to start and actually designed a shoe. He actually designed a shoe, and he
Okay.
wanted to open up a business, and he titled it Saving the Youth LLC. So I actually gave him the money to open up his LLC,
Okay.
Saving the Youth.
Young
And
entrepreneur.
yes,
Because
and so I'm
I
sorry.
noticed in the documentary you talk about the fact he was just not a 9 to 5 type of person.
No.
He didn't have.
Um,
He was wanted to run his own business at an early age. It seemed
yes,
like.
he
Yeah.
had jobs. He had
Yeah.
jobs, but Amir didn't believe in a work. He was like, I will not be working a 9 to 5, for
Right.
the rest of my life. He didn't
Right.
believe in working 2 jobs. He always looked at it like, why should adults have to work 2 jobs? He just didn't understand it. He didn't feel like that should be something that somebody should do as an adult. Like they should not have to work 2 jobs. And like I said, he was very independent. He got things on his own. If he wanted something, he would come to us, but really he didn't want to. He liked to do things on his own, and he listened to me and his father. He didn't have a background. He had nothing on his record. They couldn't even find a parking
Karen, at
ticket.
what point did you begin to realize that his death and how it happened was wrong? Obviously, you're hearing different things, and the BCA is talking to you. When did you begin to realize that you're
Actually, when we came in town, so I got in town, and I believe, my mind was very foggy back then. I believe it's like maybe the next day or so, and maybe a day or two. And so finally we got represented on the legal side. And so they said that you need to show the parents the footage
right?
of when they went in and they and so we went down to the police station. I don't remember what day. And we went down there, and we were all in a room. And as we sat there, they showed me the footage of where they show everybody where they're entering without knocking, because it was a no knock warrant, had nothing to do with the mirror or anybody that lived in that apartment. No names mentioned on the warrant. It was a no knock warrant for property. They were
What?
searching for property, not a person.
What?
Oh.
So search for property. Not and they use the SWAT team. We'll talk about that too, for searching for property. So when they went and when they showed the part where they do the key and they enter, and as they ran up in and surrounded my baby, I ran out of the room before I yelled, y'all, because what they told us, the narrative, what Buddy was talking about is rumors were going around, and they were saying that it was like as if Amir was ambushing them. Like he was sitting on the couch waiting for them to come in. And we were like, we know our children, but we want to make sure that what people are putting out there, uh, is this true or not? But we need to see it for ourselves. And that's the narrative that they let their PRs put out.
And who sanctions that in what you all, as I know you're working with some really prominent people, Benjamin Crump, the Reverend Al Sharpton, and the likes of them, who's really backing you in your pursuit of justice. And we appreciate that of those gentlemen. But who controls that narrative in the Minneapolis Police Department? Is it the Attorney General, or how far does this go that's allowing this to come out without the facts being
I was
revealed to what they are?
I was told that it was their PR that they no longer have. That it was a PR because the interim chief at that time got confronted, Amelia, and they were asking her, why did they lie? Why did they put out that he was Somalian, that he was a homicide suspect, that he was waiting for them to come in, and then he, stuff like that. And from my understanding is their PR person who's no longer with them or represents them is a person that they claim put out that information. But to me, I believe it's the chief of the police. That's just what I see. I believe it comes straight from the chief of police.
You feel they have to sign off on that message before it goes out?
I truly do. I believe they have to.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's the one that was out there. You go back and look at videos with her speaking. She's the one that's saying, well, also there's an angle where you really can't tell where he's pointing the gun at the police officer. She lied about that.
There's a documentary about this that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but we just looking at the raw footage, and for anybody watching this show, we recommend that you do that. He was not pointing his gun at anybody.
At all.
No.
Not at all.
And he was licensed to carry that gun, from what I understand. And he was asleep under the cover when they came in. I mean, it's pretty vivid about how they came in, the approach, and how long it took for them to
9 seconds.
9 seconds total, from what we understand it to be. And it is horrific to watch. And I could understand when you saw it for the first time, the conclusion you came to, because that was my son. I would have came to the exact same conclusion too. I couldn't imagine thinking anything differently.
How did you feel at that point? Did they consult with you first, with you and Andre, or did they? I'm assuming they did before they made that joint statement, or did they not?
Actually, I was at the NAN convention last year, and I was speaking on the panel, and so I was in New York along with my sister and Buddy, and the attorney Jeffrey Storms was in a conference room with Mike Freeman and Keith Ellison, and Ben Crump was headed to the NAN convention, in a car. So we were like Zoom, and that's when they decided and told us first that they were not going to charge because they couldn't win.
So they couldn't win. That's why they weren't going to charge, because they didn't think they could win the case.
Yes, and then also you have to understand that then that the police officers hide behind Graham versus Connor, which is where they can hide behind and say, I feared for my safety, and get away of an innocent victim.
Similar to Breonna Taylor, I think, when that happened with her, trying to say that they had fear for their lives and so forth. So it just doesn't wash.
Yeah, they can just about anybody with that fear out there.
Reaching in the glove compartment and get his what?
No, he was reaching for his ID.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was gonna say. His driver's license, his ID.
And he feared for his life. The officer said, use that same excuse.
Yes. So, and once again, it like 9 seconds, and one officer kicked the couch twice. He kicked the couch so hard that it almost looked like it was going to tip over. He moved the couch to wake up my son. So they knew when they went up in there, they knew that they can see that there was somebody up underneath that blanket.
Amir's case resonated with so many people that it obviously got national attention, which brought in Benjamin Crump and
the Reverend Al
Sharpton. How soon did they get wind of what happened and reached out to you, or did you reach out to them first to bring attention to this matter that brought it to a national stage?
Immediately, because remember, they were not, it had been quiet. Well, we know it hasn't been quiet, but after George Floyd, it did get quiet in the Twin Cities. Well, and so everybody thought you're not going to hear of another. Right. And just the fact that once we start speaking and once we start talking and letting them know about the video, and how Buddy was telling people, slow down the video when you watch it. When you watch the video, make sure you slow it down, because that's when they can see the officer kicked the couch twice.
Yep.
You kicking the couch twice. Y'all not in fear, and y'all the SWAT team. Y'all went in there, and our narrative. We believe that when you see the video, that was a third apartment that they did a raid on that day, that they did a search warrant for in that building. So Amir was in the last apartment.
It was for property, though. I'm not understanding why they needed a SWAT team.
And why is the judge signing off on a SWAT team for property? I mean, are they looking? You know, that is questionable.
You know, St. Paul PD is the one that initiated the assistance of Minneapolis Police Department. So they were looking for someone, and they wanted them to help out. So my understanding is MPD said, we're not going to assist you unless we can do a no-knock warrant. All you have to do was just knock. I keep saying this. If you would have just knocked on that door, my son would have either woke up or heard you or whoever else was in the apartment at that time. They would have answered the door, and you could have came in and looked for whatever you was thinking that you was going to try to find. And my son will probably be here today. But you guys chose to be bullies behind badges with guns and go in and take an innocent life and think that we're just going to sit around and just accept it.
Right.
Karen,
it had nothing to do with your
conversation that we had. I want to bring this up because it bothers me. Two of the officers that came into that apartment, weren't they involved in another incident?
Yes. So they were involved in the incident where the African-American male during the George Floyd protests, they were shooting out rubber bullets, I guess, or something, trying to ignite the protesters. And they came upon this African-American male, and they were shooting outside of a van, or I believe it was a white van, whatever vehicle it was they were in. These were actually the officers. The African-American male shot back at them, and then they attacked him and beat him up.
Seen that video.
And he sued the city and won this earlier this past year. And those two of those officers were actually in the room with my son. They should have been fired back then.
Right.
Yeah, when you told me that, when you mentioned that to me, I was like, why weren't they fired? Well, why were they still able to be on the force after doing that? Because I did follow that gentleman's case. I can't think of his name right now, but I did follow the case for a while, and I did read that he did win the lawsuit. And I just assumed they got rid of the officers.
Well, I'll tell you why they didn't get rid of them. Because in a interview that Mike Freeman did after he left office, he talked about that. He spoke about Amir with those officers being two of the officers that were in there with Amir, and he said they don't look at the cameras, the body cam footage. They believe what the officers tell them, and that's why they never went after those officers, because they believe what they tell them. So imagine if Freeman has been in office for over 24 years. Imagine how many have been swept under the rug in the Twin Cities.
Is that policy?
Look at the videos.
Is that policy that they don't look at the cameras, the videos, or is that just
it's slave patrol policy? That's all it is. You don't have to have a policy. We already know that all of the modern day police officers precincts have been instilled by the slave patrol.
Yeah. Right.
They have their own customs.
Right.
Because for him to even admit that means that chief of police and everybody else needs to go back and go look at every that has taken place by the hands of the police in the Twin Cities. They are not to be trusted. Because if you're saying that you believe those officers and then you found out and felt like, oh, wow, they lied to us, we couldn't believe it. Well, you should. I mean, what do you mean? You're not the victim, because you should have looked at the body cam footage, and that's what the African-American male said. He said all they had to do was look at the video and they would have seen that I was telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that those were actually officers, and he thought that they were some type of white supremacist, and that's why he shot back at them.
They were dressed like regular civilians. I saw the video footage of that. So yeah.
Well, I do believe that officers join the force sometimes because they're on a power trip and they want to feel like they've got some sort of a control over certain lives in certain communities. You know, I know the documentary that features Amir touched on slave patrol. We can talk a little bit more about that, about how the parallels between slavery back in its day and to some extent now mirrors how officers act and continue to act within African American communities, in that they feel like they have a license to do things, and justifiably, as far as taking lives, searching people, taking away their rights, making them feel they don't have rights, just really treating people in such a condescending, degrading way because they think they're in a position of authority. And I know the documentary touched on that. And could you share a little bit more about your perspective on it, given that what you've seen so far and out there, and how you're continuing to be a voice for this cause?
You know, what surprised me when I saw The Sound of the Police is the education piece where, you know, when we hear about racism and everything that happened, we always think about down south. No one ever thinks about up north. That was a piece that I took away with me that educated me, where it showed that even though a lot of the people migrated up north for work, they still had to endure the racist practices of the slave patrol. And it made me think about how there was a lynching in Duluth, Minnesota, still parallel to what happened to my baby, because I truly believe that because of the color of his skin, in less than 9 seconds, they didn't give him a chance to identify himself or anything. Mm-hmm. And you know, and I'm sorry, but you know, I want to also let people know that, you know, Amir and his brother, they showed me a picture of the Duluth lynching when they were in high school, and they asked me, and they were like, "Mom, where do you think this happened?" And I said, "That's down south." And my sons were like, "No, it's not. That happened here. That happened in Duluth, Minnesota." And I couldn't believe it. That was the awareness, that the piece of how how they were as African American males, like learning and being in a teachable moment, that was something that my sons explained to me that nobody talks about in the Twin Cities, that there was a lynching in Duluth, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And the Sound of the Police, it just shows you how from back when they started the slave patrol up until 2023, they are still utilizing the same racist practices. The difference is they wore white hoods and white robes. Now they wear a gun and a badge in the color blue, brown, black, whatever. It's still the same.
You would think with so George Floyd in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, where your son, that we were done with all that, or at least on some level.
We'll hope so.
It was hope, you would think, because that wasn't just a national conversation. That was a worldwide conversation where the marches went on in Brazil, France, in Europe, all kind of different countries. Then for this to happen with your son, obviously it's heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, but we're thinking that, this is over, that we don't have to deal with this anymore. So with the laws that are changing, obviously some things changed somewhat with George Floyd, but speak to us about your campaign for justice for Amir that talks about the no knock warrant, the legislation that's been brought forth, the things that are doing to continue to make change. If we have to do it one brick at a time, unfortunately, it's one life at a time, which is so unfortunate. Our mothers are losing our sons on the weekly, daily throughout this country. The criminal justice system is slavery by another name. And that's pretty much what it is in a sense. And it continues to impede upon our communities in a way that, when does this stop? It seems like a never-ending journey that our mothers are on and our fathers are on, and how you worry about your sons. And obviously you have an older son who's still with us, and how you still have to worry about him and how he probably has to check in.
Your daughters,
Yeah, daughters too.
they're taking
Daughters too.
women lives as
They
well.
take, yeah,
So
that's
we gotta
correct.
acknowledge that.
We have to acknowledge that. That's
Yeah,
true.
but yeah, Karen, it looks like you were able to get a little bit of progress
Yeah,
on
talk to us
this
about
no
that.
knock warrant. Can you just share with our audience how that's taken shape and where you feel it is and where it still needs to go?
So in May of this year, Governor Walsh in Minnesota signed the no knock warrant bill into law, where it's a restricting no knock warrants. So basically, they can only do it if there was a hostage situation or kidnapping, something like that. So realistically, they can't do no knock warrants anymore in the Twin Cities. We worked tirelessly from day one. We voiced our concerns and we said we want them to ban no knock warrants across the United States. And with the Andre Locke was very diligent in the Twin Cities. He would go and he spoke in front of the the House in the Senate, and then also my sister Linda Tyler, she did it as well. We just continue to just keep our voices out there, just letting them know, hey, you stole our son, not going anywhere. And I believe, I don't know which states, but I believe that it's 6 states that have a banning to no knock warrants. Then also there's other states where they're actually changing the language to no knock warrants. And we said time after time again, it's not you have officers going in that are being shot at, that are being killed with no knock warrants. And then you also have innocent victims like Breonna Taylor and my son Amir Locke due to no knock warrants. They should be here. They don't want the officers, just like the officers want to go home after they check out from their 8-hour shift or whatever hours they work in a day. Our loved ones want to come home too. Amir was coming back to me. Amir wanted to come back to Texas. We're going to continue to voice it. And not only that, when it comes back to the no knock warrant, we're also working with Representative Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, and she's pushing it to be on the federal level.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Legislation was passed in May, correct, Karen?
Yes.
And then that bill that was passed, along with some other things, was actually put into place the early part of July, correct? July 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, somewhere in there?
Yes, because we were actually there in May. So we were actually there when he signed it. And that happened in May. We were there.
Okay.
At the Capitol.
Okay. So
do you feel with that type of legislation on the books now, if that would have kept Amir with us, if it had been in place at the time?
Are you satisfied with that legislation?
There were a couple people that feel it to this day, and they take the blame for Amir not being here, and they feel like if they would have pushed it more a couple years ago, Amir would still be here. And it's sad because he has to be that face of a no knock warrant bill. But if it's gonna take saving lives, because especially for people that look like me, I have a granddaughter, I have little cousins, all of us have children, or it doesn't matter about the age, it's the color of our son was never a threat because he was asleep.
You're not stopping though, right? You're not going to stop until you receive some type of justice. We're not going to just accept that. I couldn't win a case. That's why we couldn't prosecute.
No, and Amir knew. I knew what type of son I had, and Amir knew what type of mama and father he came from. And
there you go.
We don't take no for no answer. Nobody tells me no. And we worship a higher power, and we're spiritually driven. And that's why we're not worried. As you see on the back, it says justice for Amir Locke, and that's what we're going
Right.
to get. We're going to get
Right.
all forms of justice for our son. And it's
Right.
not going to even just be about Amir. It's going to be about all the stolen lives in the Twin Cities. They
Right.
have over 500 in the Twin Cities.
Mm.
Y'all
Mm.
have 2 decrees up there, one from the Department of Human Rights and also one from the federal government.
Right.
There's 2 decrees down there for the police brutality and the practices of what they're doing down there.
Right.
No, we're not going to stop. I'm not going anywhere. I told him from day one, if you would have just knocked on the door and woke my son up, you wouldn't have to deal with his mama. Wrong son, but you got the right mother. I'm not.
There you go.
Mhm.
Corrected me when I said on the federal level, you know, we're trying to get this passed. You said we will get this passed. So,
Yeah.
so I'm with you on it. So we're going to get this done. So
And I
we're
also want to
thankful.
talk about the documentary. There's a couple
Yes.
of documentaries. Let's spend some time while we have time here,
Okay.
Karen, to talk about the documentary that has Amir in it. There's 2 of them. Can you tell us a little bit about both of them?
Okay, so we talked.
Yeah.
So the Sounds of the Police was, it came out on August 4th, and then they're streaming it now on Hulu.
Yep.
Right now, that's the Sounds
Very
of the
good
Police.
documentary.
Yeah, we saw it. It's very
Yes.
good. Very good.
And then also on the same day, which was not planned, on August 4th in a suburb of Chicago, Illinois, we also released the No Knock, No Charge Amir Locke story documentary. And that we had a private screening down there in Illinois, and we will be bringing it to the Twin Cities.
And then when is that?
When is
And
that?
that one is actually going to it's going to allow the police officers to tell the story of what happened and what they did to my son.
Is that right?
Really?
Wow,
Really?
that should
Really?
be
Wow.
pretty compelling.
That's
Body
good.
cam footage that no one's ever seen.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
And you're going to release that?
So it's not our narrative, it's the police narrative.
Yeah.
We're gonna let
Okay.
them narrate the story.
Okay.
Mhm.
Can't wait to
That's
see
gonna be
that.
released on his birthday. Am I correct?
Yes, we're gonna come to the Twin Cities over in November
Okay.
around and show it on Amir's birthday.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Final note on this, from a standpoint, we understand the officers weren't charged at this time with the state. Is there any pending
Litigation, civil or anything?
civil or criminal that's still going on at the federal level
That you can talk about.
that you can talk about? Or
The only thing that we right now is being on behalf of Ben Crump and our attorneys. There was a civil suit filed in February of this year,
Okay.
and we move in silence.
Right.
And
Okay.
so
Okay.
you know, you never, what they say, never tell your left hand what your right hand is
Right
doing.
hand, right.
That's what this family does, and that's why we're making progress, because we
Okay.
move in silence.
That's right.
Karen, can we have you back on our show after this documentary? The second documentary is released.
Yeah.
Maybe have your buddy on as well with you.
Yes, if you want to, like, I could come back in I'll be up there, like I said, in
Okay.
November. So after it's showed, I'll be up there. We can just
Pop
do
on
something
back.
after that, and then
Okay.
like you guys can talk about that or whatever after you see it and stuff like that.
Well, again, we're so thankful to have you, and we know that you're continuing to do some great things for this cause, and we're looking forward to watching you and seeing things happen along the lines of change that is so needed for us in the Black and brown community, our young boys and young girls, and just us as Black and brown people at such a disadvantage and at such under scope of fear, that we live under when it comes to the police. So we're going to continue to do this.
I want to point this out. It's not just the white police officers that are committing unjust crimes against us. It's also our own people. Think about the officers in Memphis, what they did. That was horrible. And then when I was watching the documentary, it pointed out that it's a somatic
Spirit.
Yeah,
With
when you know that blue suit and the badge and the gun, and our Black officers are committing crime against their own people as well.
And one thing we cannot do as African American people of color, melanin people, some people, whatever you want to call yourself. We cannot become complacent. And like you said earlier, we thought that we were done with this after George Floyd, but you have to understand, when a person is evil and they're used to getting away for decades,
Right.
upon decades, they're not going to ever stop. They have to be stopped. We need to get out, and I'm telling you, it matters, because if you're not going to be there for us, don't come in our communities at the last hour asking and begging for our votes. I've seen it happen. If you're going to get in there, you're going to do what you're supposed to do, or vote them out. They need to clean the entire system up in the Twin Cities, from the bottom all the way up to the top. It needs to be cleaned up. They need a whole new do-over.
Right. All right. Well, we appreciate you.
Karen Will has spoken.
Karen has spoken, and so
Karen Will.
thank you again, and we're looking forward to following this and continue to see what we can do to make change. So it's been a blessing. So okay, two sides of the same coin. Welcomes again, Karen Wells, and we thank you for being with us today.
I thank you all.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you,
talk
Karen.
soon.
And everybody
Thank you.
watch this documentary. This is very, very important. It's very, very important.
Yes.
All right.
Thank
We'll have
you.
you on the show for the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
For Amir. Thank you.
Thank
Justice
you.
for Amir,
Justice for
everybody.
Amir.
Yes, my baby. Yes.
That's right.
Right.
Thank
Get
you.
it.